do you want to talk about the levy strategic planning that the Delta Stewardship Council is doing?
It's the Phil Eisenberg playbook,
Right.
where you first invite a lot of experts in, and what they testify means nothing, you know. And then you invite more experts in. Then you get science involved. You get all these things involved, and then you make the decision you've been planning to make all along.
Right.
And that's exactly how it's happening.
Exactly. Do you think that there's any hope for the citizenry or the residents of the Delta to have any input, or a way for us to get input into these agencies so that they stop ruling over us rather than working with us?
You're virtually frozen out
Right.
of getting that input. You write your comments and who looks at it, you know?
Right.
And that's the way politics is today. It completely ignores the public.
Right. Right. Unless it's an election.
Yes.
Maintaining its goals, or have they also fallen to the...
They've been trying. They've made some good decisions, but they have no authority
Right.
to do anything. It's the Delta Stewardship Council,
Right.
which is making all. They're in charge, and from the beginning, this was set up to be that way.
Right.
You see, all the people on it, nobody protests anything in the Delta Stewardship Council.
No. I guess we need to get started on that, huh?
I appeared before the Delta Stewardship Council when they had just appointed somebody, and I
Right.
sat down and I said, I want you guys to know that you really blew it. You had a chance to appoint me to the council. And they all laughed.
You would have done great.
That shit.
So what about the Department of Water Resources? What is their role? Are they our friends in the Delta, or what do you
No,
think
the
about it?
Department of Water Resources is totally with the governor. You see, for a lot of people, this is their careers on the line. And to me, that's the same, in my opinion, it's the same thing with Mark Cohen and all the other people at the Water Resources. They're all in the get along, go along mode,
Right.
and they all feel that we need the tunnels,
Right.
whether they know why or not. you
Right.
see, but it's their job that they're worried about.
Right. So do you think it's strange that Department of Water Resources employees don't even agree with the tunnels, but yet plod along and continue to plan it? And...
That happens in all state agencies, but most of the people who disagree, they don't stay there too long, or else they're simply ignored.
Right.
Because you see, it's my way or the highway.
Right.
The DWR, that's the way it is.
And what about the DWR? Is there any chance of getting a hold of that agency and reining them in and bringing them back to center?
Well, a governor, if I were elected governor next week, the first thing I would do is gut the DWR and get all the old wood out of it, you know, and get people in there who are consciously ready to do the right thing,
Right.
you see, rather than just run roughshod over the people.
Right. So if we got rid of all of the dead wood, which I love, break up the log jam, and we actually had them considering a plan that would be good for the Delta, good for the residents, good for the fish, good for the overall health of the Delta, what would that look like? Like the Western Delta intake concept or something like that?
It would be the Western Delta intake concept, yes. Run it through the Delta, reinforce the levees in the Delta, run it through the Delta down to the pumps. You see, what people don't realize is, here's the biggest thing. According to the State Water Board, water has to flow past Chips Island at a rate of 11,174 cubic feet per second in order to keep salinity out of the Delta.
Right.
Now, if they're going to run that water into the tunnels, you see, what's the rate of flow in the Sacramento River down past Chips Island? It's going to allow salinity to come into the Delta. Now, they have a plan that they've been spoken about of water gates. What people don't tell you is, if you put up water gates to keep the water out, at high tide the water builds up. and you're going to have to reinforce the levees 5 feet high all the way back to San Francisco Bay.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Right.
And then when you release the water gates, what are you doing? You're releasing salt water into the delta. I mean, it is so screwed up, I can't tell you.
So it sounds like they've like attempted to over-engineer the delta, but they've done a really poor job. And now this tunnel, they're using the justification that climate change is going to bring salt up regardless of what we do, whether we use water gates or the different techniques that they have. That's what I've heard a lot of, is we need these tunnels to enforce and protect the reliability of the water supply.
Well, I'll tell you why they say that. I went to a PPIC conference where they talked about water transfers from north to south.
Right.
You see, the way they affect water transfers now, they let it loose in Lake Oroville, say, 5,000 cubic feet. It goes into the Sacramento, through the delta, and down to the pumps. But sometimes it doesn't go through the delta.
Right.
And they were complaining, we lost a whole, 5,000 acre feet because
Right.
it went out to the sea.
Right.
Well, that's what water's supposed to do.
Right.
See,
Right.
that's what God meant rivers to do, is
Right.
empty into the sea. So they're losing money that way. If it goes into the tunnels now, it'll preserve all those water transfers, and there'll be no lost money. So that's a big factor involved.
But I hear this all the time, people say it's a big waste of water for it to run out to the sea. I hear that all the time. That's
Listen,
one of the biggest.
they've had one politician down in Southern California said, 70% of the water goes out to sea. Well, that's what water does.
And that's how we keep back the salinity.
That's how you keep back the salinity.
Right.
See,
So-
and these dumb politicians just don't understand that.
We have water flowing through our delta, through past levees. The reclamation districts and the taxpayers are in charge of maintaining those levees. And there's a feeling like they are not the, such as Westland's Water District or Met or the different receivers of the water to do whatever they're going to do with it. They're not paying their fair share as far as the maintenance of those levees, but they're getting the biggest benefit from it.
Well, you touched on the heart of a very important point, and that's that the state water rights should be completely reworked all around. There's people drawing 5 different water out from 5 different grants or something like this. I mean, that's got to stop. You've got to be very non-partisan about this and take people's needs into account. But water rights are too old to continue as they're continuing now. It just puts everything out of balance. We need fair water rights for everybody.
But isn't the fear that if we go through that reorganizational system, because the current politicians and the current players that are in charge of the California water system and the aqueducts and conveyance, that if they're put in charge of reorganizing the water rights, that the people, the citizenry of the state of California, will become on the bottom rung of that deal. They'll get the bad deal, such as farmers in the Delta who have
That's a very legitimate fear.
So how do we avoid that? How would we do that?
Well, you see, we need to, in California, develop a community spirit where people work together to achieve just ends for everyone. This is not alive in California. It's been dead ever since the politicians took charge. But you have to think of the other person. You have to consider the rights of the other person. They do this in Europe. I don't see why they don't do it in the United States, which is supposed to be, the land of the free.
We're supposed to be smart, right?
Yeah, we're not free. We're just serfs, to the people in charge. And so that's a very legitimate thing.
So the last thing is, have you ever heard of the concept of sending surplus water to Tulare Lake and having during high precipitation years, having all of the surplus water, as it was directed by legislation in 1917, sent down to Tulare Lake and then used as it was needed.
I don't see all. The word all frightens me a bit. I don't mind using Tulare Lake as a reservoir, but I also think we should build some more reservoirs in Northern California to trap the water and then use it economically just to have it. And I am totally against raising Shasta barriers 18 feet. My God, just to think of that it shows how stupid people can be.
Right, and covering the Indian burial grounds and doing all of the horrible things. Well, I really appreciate talking to you, Burt. You've been a real joy to have, and we really appreciate you coming to our meetings and enlightening us with your history and your information, and I always learn something new from you.
Thank you.
Every time. It's been a real joy. I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you for everything.